Welcome to another episode of Zero Ales and Hockey Tales with Wally. And today I am so excited to have on a self-proclaimed 2,000-year-old from Stretford, England. His hockey journey has taken him to Sheffield, and Siberia. He's been running amok of the journalism world game for over 40 years. Got his start with Stockport Express and then spread his wings with Lancashire Evening Post. He's helped prove a wrongly convicted fella innocent and in turn wrote a book with the guy. He has been the British Regional Press Awards Hard News Journalist of the Year, folks. And he's no stranger to the limelight, as he was the first reporter on the Handless Corpse case. He's dove into the world of boxing and been the Star's sports editor, but he is best known for keeping it real and bleeding orange, covering the Sheffield Steelers and countless shed guys. And he's even had the stones to write an article about the shed and how good looking Robert Dowd is. Welcome to my shed, Bob Westerdale.
Thank you very much. I don't know where you got that from. Some of that was new to me as well.
Really? Did I make some shit up?
No, absolutely not. No.
Okay. Because the research team did get hot, and man, you've done a lot of stuff in the journalism world. And I get into how we know each other. Nice to meet you.
Absolutely. Your research team being who?
Me.
I suspected as much.
Yeah.
But it is nice to meet you, Brent. So
yeah.
I'm a bit bemused why you should ask me when you so many more interesting people, but nonetheless, good to cross swords.
Well, I think to make hockey entertaining and to bring the value to the fans at the arena that they get, I think it takes everybody. And what you provide the Sheffield Steelers, the insight into pretty well every game from what I see. But what really made me realize you're a shed guy is I Googled 2 ales and hockey tales one day, and an article of yours popped up, and it was titled, "Is Robert Dowd the best looking hockey player in the world?" or in the league. Sorry, maybe the world.
At this point, I would very much like to say that I don't necessarily write all the headlines. And as beautiful a human being as Robert Dowd is, I don't think I did do that particular one. That comes back, does it not, to Carter Beston Will, who's obviously got a man crush on him.
That's right. Yeah, when he came to the shed.
On your very program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought then you wrote, like, I just saw a little caption that said, and you had your name on it. I swear it did.
Oh, I'm not suggesting that I might not have mentioned it, but it doesn't necessarily mean the sentiment is mine as well.
Right. No, you were just bringing up the topic, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Just like I was. I'm not saying I am getting hot and bothered by Robert Dowd. He's just a strapping fella, right?
Yeah. So you were in...
so is Josh Batch too, folks. Check him out.
You were in Cardiff for a couple of years, were you not?
Yes. So I get into how we know each other. 2014 to 16. That was the Devils versus Steelers, was a pretty good rivalry that was just a brewing, really. But you guys won both league titles those years.
Well, the reason I bring that up is I don't know whether you've got any affinity with Wales / England, but the two nations collide tomorrow night in the World Cup. So, Brent, who are you favouring?
Well, I don't like to start making enemies in the shed, but I will be supporting Wales.
Yeah, completely understood. I mean, I'm English.
Last time I checked, no one in England had a Wally night.
You know, when Wales do that national anthem, and you'd have stood there many times, even if you're not Welsh, it does put the old hairs on the back of the neck.
I was going to say it puts your hairs on the back of your neck up, because, man, you get to Glasgow and the Welsh fans sing it together in the crowd. Or even like we used to have Paul Sullivan, who would do the videos for the Devils, would also go out and sing the national anthem. And I thought he would do a fantastic job. I get so worked up during the national anthem in the big blue tent.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what any of it means, but it all sounds pretty good.
It's quite the language. You see the like street signs and you're like, okay.
Yeah. Well, some of the names of the towns are so long, it takes you less time to actually drive there than pronounce it.
I agree. It's a strange language, but they don't really speak it that much around there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how we know each other. The Devils and Steelers had some fantastic hockey matches those 2 years. But I guess you got the better of us other than the Challenge Cup night, you know?
Well, actually, there's not much in it. I think they play each other again this coming weekend. And this isn't my research, it's somebody else's. I think Sheffield have won one more than Cardiff over the entire time they've been playing each other, which means to me, as close to parity as you can probably get.
That's awesome. Yeah,
I always used to love going to Cardiff for the atmosphere, whichever rink they were in, for the national anthem, and for the fact that you'd be in for a torrid time for the first few minutes because you come out like wailing banshees. And in the slightly smaller rinks, sometimes you can get more attitude and more passion from the fans.
I think from not to sound bad, because I know Sheffield has a big arena, but I think it's the same for the players too. I think you can get more passion in the game. There's more bumping and grinding in a small rink.
Yeah.
Ice surface, I could say.
There used to be a team called Durham Wasps, and they had netting up around the side. But if you were in the first 2 or 3 rows, they were that close to the ice that, despite the fact there was netting, there was it was entirely possible you were going to get a butt end in the chops just watching the game. But I used to like that. Whitley Bay, another place up in the northeast, places that we don't go to now. Having said that, the arena age has come on board. Belfast Giants, such a wonderful organisation, in a city which has needed something that isn't partisan. Nottingham Panthers, and nobody in Sheffield is going to like me saying this, really like their rink. So
they host a great playoff weekend.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good two-touch area too. So I like it, other than the ice surface being too big. I just am not a fan, as people probably have heard me in the shed. I think NHL size ice is a better game of hockey because there's just more action.
Well, that's because you're basically lazy, though, isn't it?
Well, I just didn't get around as well at the end,
Yeah. But, you're only on for about 45 seconds. So no, I don't see the problem, really. It's not like, it's not that big an ice that you can't do 45 seconds and get off again.
Well, it's not that. It's like you beat a guy in the corner. You're still nowhere near the net. You still got to go too far.
Okay.
That's all. And, someone dumps it in, you'd have to go chase it further.
Yeah. Those days are gone, I take it.
Yeah. Here's a question. Can you skate?
No, not really. No, I
need a penguin. Do you use a penguin?
Well, no. I grew up. This country, as you will know, having lived in Wales, actually in Wales it's more rugby union, but in England in particular and Scotland it's all about football. And I grew up in Manchester, where it was a question of, if you didn't support United where I lived, then there's something entirely wrong with you. And as much as I've wanted to embrace hockey over the last 31 years, the passion burns within me more for football than hockey. Yeah. And I don't know, it's the other way around. So it really cheesed me off when England played America the day in the World Cup, and America were just as good or just as bad, whichever way you look at it, as England were. So it's an I forgot what the question was now, so I'm rambling. Remind me.
It don't matter. I'm curious about you being more into football than hockey. So then why all these years you're writing about hockey? Why are you writing about football?
Because if I started reporting on football, the joy and the pain and the anguish and the satisfaction and
you're just a fan of football.
Well, I'm not actually a fan of football. I don't really give that big a deal about England. I'm just interested in one particular football club, and where I was born, you just simply had to, and it's still within me now all these years later. I remember this is going back to just after the Romans left the country, so it is deeply ingrained in me. When I go to the hockey. I really want Sheffield to win. I'm also independent as a journalist, so occasionally, there will be issues. There will be problems between me and the club or individuals at the club. I have been banned a couple of times. Which
You've been banned from the like arena, from talking to the players.
Oh, absolutely! Banned from the players' tunnel, banned from getting in the arena. But
was there a hurt feelings report? Like,
not really, because if as an independent journalist you're kicked out of somewhere, then it probably means you're doing the job right.
he probably struck a nerve with someone.
We're not here to have rose-tinted spectacles on. We're here to set, and we get it wrong time after time. It's, again, I get that, but we're also there to give an impartial view. Now, I am partial sometimes in the sense that I want Steelers to win, but if they stink the arena out,
then they stunk the arena out.
Well, I reserve the right to say that. And occasionally, you will run into people who don't like you. Astonishing as that may be, there are some people that don't like me. All you have to do is go on social media, and you'll find plenty of those.
You could say you're not for everyone.
No, but I like to.
It's like my opening song. I'm not for everyone, right? Some teams didn't want me back, and it's like, I don't know what I did wrong. I guess I'm not for everyone.
Yeah, but you can't attach yourself as independent as I am to a club for 3 decades and have everybody hated you, because it would just be a complete waste of time. So I suppose I've ended up on the plus side of it.
Well, Giovanni, this is something I wrote down of how we know each other. The research team was hot, and I saw what I think it's your article, because I think you wrote it. It said the 8-letter word no journalist should ever forget. And this really struck a nerve with me. You wrote, contacts, the bread and butter of our working lives. People who will tell you things that they wouldn't tell anybody else in the media, material that would never see the light of day without that unique partnership between them and you. So with what I do in the shed, man, that really hit home, because I think a lot of my buddies' stories that I've got out of them never would have happened without our unique partnership.
Absolutely. And that's another one you've dug up from the distant past. But I think the point I was trying to make there is that it's all about individuals. Newspaper stories, decent website stories are about individuals. Yes, of course, the team is paramount. The sport is massively important, but it's all made up of individual components.
Yeah.
When I wrote that, I wasn't actually talking about hockey or sport. I was talking about the art, if such a thing exists, of journalism. It's about getting people to tell you stuff, as you just pointed out, that they wouldn't necessarily tell anybody else because they trust you. And I like to think, I would take to the grave anything anybody ever told me off the record. Now, over time, you will cross swords with people, but over time, I think they get an idea what you're about as a human being as well as a journalist. So, and from your perspective, this is such a lovely vehicle, because you chat to them after a while. I mean, I just heard the first 5 minutes of the Davy Phillips one, which you did, and regrettably I don't have time to listen to the rest of it. And he said at the start of it, he was a bit nervous.
Yeah.
Now, I found that disarming in a way, because he's such a fantastic bloke. He's borderline insane. And I absolutely think he's one of the great characters of the sport, and why I'm still attached to it.
What a dandy he is. Yeah.
I bet within half an hour or 10 minutes or whatever it was, he was telling you things because you created the environment for him to feel comfortable to tell you things.
And we did have a fantastic chat, and then we stayed in contact afterwards, and it's like, I don't know if the shed is a comfortable place, but like, it's like I have built like a whole new hockey family with way more guys than were part of it. And it started with my hockey family, and it's become much of a larger family, and it's really cool. And it's kind
Do
of
you
like
get
when
emotional about this?
I do. Yeah, I really like it.
Well, actually, that shows you in a good light because it's not just a job. You know, I mean,
I don't make money doing this. I just do this for the people.
yeah, well, good on you for that. I do it as a job, but I also do it because I like to think I have some degree of integrity. Not everybody will think that. I did a story a couple of years ago about a player called Nikolai Lemchigov, who played for Steelers. He was a Russian guy, and well away from the rink, nothing to do with sports. His car careered down a slope and I think made contact with some people outside of school. I can't remember the precise details. Now, as a sports journalist, you think, oh, if I write that, I'm going to be in trouble with the club, I'm going to be in trouble with the fans, I'm certainly going to be in trouble with the player. So, as a news journalist, which I fundamentally am, I wrote it, it went out, and there was all sorts of repercussions, some horrendous stuff written about me on social media. I don't know whether you've been on the butt end of that, but as much as you want to have a thick skin in life, it does get through to you.
Oh, yeah.
But what you're doing is a bit different to me because I'm looking for an angle for a story. You don't really know until you talk to people what they're going to say, do you? Because
I have no idea. Sometimes when the stories I hear when it comes out, I was like, holy moly, I can't believe I just heard that.
yeah.
It's like I wish I had someone that like could go back through everything I've done and like snip those stories that like every episode's got a couple. And it's like as soon as you hear it, you're just like, what?
yeah. Well, that's the other thing. I mean, you do lots of Brits. Do you do lots of Canadian players in Canada and North and America yourself now? Current players?
Yeah, I try to have some current guys on. There's a lot of retired fellas that are around my age that like the way I guess this is how it started was I wrote this to Ben Thompson after we were writing back and forth about the fun we had when he came on, and he was a guy played against in Germany it's amazing the bond you can have with a guy you never played with when you both lived the same life as an import in Germany for years. But he wrote how much fun he had, and I said, well, I hope your family enjoys it because that's why I started it and why I do it. And then I wrote, I also do it for me and I also do it for you. So that's why I do it.
Yeah.
And I wish this could be my job someday because I love this shit. I wish I got paid to do this because I love everything about it.
Well, I sense the emotion in you, and I just take my hat off to you because if you're involved with something that you deeply care about, you will very probably do a great job. And I don't know how many people that you've got who listen to you regularly, or whether you've considered using it on YouTube where you might attract some advertising. But I wish you all the best, Brent.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I just keep doing it because it's fun. And like I couldn't wait to get to know you today. And I think your story is interesting when the research team got hot. So, and that's why I do it. But another way how we know each other is my leading scorer you've probably ran into over the last 31 years with the Steelers, David Sims. He currently has the top 2 ranked episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Has he banned you from the arena before?
No, because David is he and I have an unusual relationship, love and hate. And yes, of course, he loves me and I hate him. But it's more to do with the fact that, in answer to your question, he knows a certain type of journalist actually revels in being banned from anywhere. The notoriety. And this is more like going back a few years.
It's like when I got the Devils banned from a hotel in Sheffield.
I reckon that's probably for something different. What was that for?
Celebrating a Challenge Cup.
Well, you put some windows through, a television out or something like that?
It wasn't even me. It was a group effort. It was a collective effort. I don't know why Todd blames me. It wasn't just me.
Terrible man. But it answers your question about Simsy. Sometimes we fall out, but we've been around each other so long now. And it doesn't surprise me that he's top of the pops when it comes to your stats and figures, because he doesn't have a lot in the way of filter. So he tells what he considers to be the truth. It has definitely cost him in the past. I remember him saying something which we won't go into now. And I suggested to him that he should make a public apology. So actually we were at Cardiff that day, and we went to an office and I filmed it and I put it out online. And ever since that, he says that was like a bear trap I'd left for him. But I still to this day think if you drop a ghoulie, in other words, make a mistake, you should actually own up to it. But
drop a ghoulie, eh?
Drop a ghoulie.
Never heard that one. Okay.
Learn
something new in the shed every day, every time.
Yeah.
So you did put out a public apology from him? Because I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. A lot of it's to do with age and your upbringing, if you know what we're talking about. And
it is a generational gap thing too, right?
Yeah,
there are a lot of older folks that may slip of the tongue because that is how they were raised and it was acceptable, right?
Yeah, most of what David says in areas like that, we are diametrically opposed. But I do understand that in the heat of the moment, if you're on a microphone at Steelers, or I'm writing 1,000 words a day on Steelers for a newspaper and online, is every possibility at some point you are going to make a mess and a hash of things. And once you've accepted that, it annoys the hell out of you perhaps when you have made a mistake, but we are all human, aren't we? Even Sims is partially human.
Well, it makes me think is when I was starting this and I was letting a fella know at work what I was thinking of starting, he goes, well, with all this cancel culture and all that, he's like, aren't you worried you're going to say something? And I was like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't have anything bad in my head that I think I would say, but yeah, it's interesting how nobody said anything too bad or anything in, I guess, 235 episodes in the shed, right?
Yeah. Well, keep on doing what you're doing, brother.
Yeah, no, and I will. So poster picks. I believe his name, just because I'm in touch with the hockey world and, I'm friends with the Steelers now, is two of your poster picks. Is his name not Wolster? And he's the picture guy, cameraman?
Dean Woolley.
Yeah.
Sorry, you cut out a bit there.
Oh, sorry. It was Wolster's his nickname, isn't he? I see him on social media. He takes the pictures for the Steelers, right? He's on your poster picks twice, right?
Yeah, he's a very, very good talent. I say that because I owe him some money for doing my daughter's wedding.
What are you pouring there? A glass of wine? Oh, yeah. Some white stuff.
As you should know, in the United Kingdom, when it goes past 5 o'clock in the evening, there's a contractual obligation with the monarchy to have a glass of wine in his or her honor. So cheers.
Well, cheers. It's middle of the workday for me, and I got a big hockey match to watch tonight. My son's Silver Stick, which is their big tournament around here. That's like an international tournament. They have their regional qualifier starts this week, and they got their big game against their biggest competitors tonight. So should be a fun game to watch,
Oh, brilliant. Good event then. Nice event.
It is, but yeah, it's crazy how much hockey you can watch when you're a parent nowadays, when your kids are both into hockey. I was at the arena. I bet you over Saturday and Sunday, I watched my former players that are playing on 3 different teams now from last season that I coached. There's 3 different teams my players are on. I watched them all play. I watched my son's team. I coached my daughter's team. I bet you I was at the rink 15 to 16 hours this weekend.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's in your blood in the same way Manchester
And you know
United
what? When I was asked to stay, when I heard my players were playing, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but supporting my little shed guys,
Yeah, good for you. Good for you, mate.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm looking forward to the game tonight. Fellas will be ready. Just got to stop that Chase kid from Port Elgin, but you have 8 granddaughters?
Oh yes, yeah, and there's another one on the way. So
Holy
the
moly.
betting is that's probably going to be a daughter as well. But very proud of my family. We've got a huge family between us, my wife and I,
Yeah.
and we're in a great part of our lives right now. And
Yeah, no doubt.
those granddaughters are at the epicenter of it.
Well, for sure. Well, that's really neat. You must be busy then outside of work.
Well, I don't just do Steelers for work. I'm self-employed, so I work for other newspapers and provide other material, mainly news. But my social life is more about my kids and grandkids than anything else.
Yeah, my social life is about the shed and then what my kids want to do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is actually a shed as well, isn't it? Either that or you live in some sort of a cave.
Yeah, no, this is my shed in the backyard.
Like it. Like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's a nice shed. It's like a home away from home, you could say. So anyways, the cameraman though for the Steelers, Wolster, he does capture some fantastic photos. I've seen some wild photos over the years of all the cameramen and women of the EIHL though do a great job, don't they?
Oh yes.
And sorry if I hijack the shit out of your pictures all the time to post stuff, folks. This shed guy's sending me poster pics, right? It's not me stealing it from you. And I'm sorry if I do. I mean to tag everybody. I'm just not good at this shit, right?
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, the clarity of pictures in well lit rinks is so much better than they are in the rubbish lit rinks. But wherever Dean is and Haley is assistant, they always come up with quality pictures, and it's all part of the event. Good pictures, not just about the sport and the game taking place. Steelers have got this little. Others are doing it as well, of course, but they do events so well. Nothing to do with the club sometimes everything to do with the club. Let me give an example. When the Queen died, I'm not particularly a monarchist, but the video presentation that they did in that arena that night, oh, bloody hell, I'll tell you, it got you. Remembrance Day every November,
They're doing things right. When they do it, they do it right.
Holy moly, yeah. And also, I think the one that struck home most was in the first game after COVID, and they just showed individual pictures of fans that were lost. I'm going to get emotional now in a minute because there's a couple of people on there that meant something to me, and they just showed a picture and they didn't need to do any more. They just panned from one picture to another. Bloody hell, it absolutely. And that's what they do best. They do simple things best like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's a hockey family too, right? When you're saying fans lost, like when people get in that arena, I know it's a very big arena, but it's usually the same people every week, right?
Well, yes, but I mean, in my lifetime, or in my 30 years watching him, there's still some doddering old folks like me that still go back from the day. But there's new generations and there's newbies, and they still do what other sporting franchises don't, which is invite people in for free, maybe a school setting or something of that nature.
And you can get hockey fans for life by doing that. You get some school kids in, and they see the game, they see the speed. That's how you grow the game, right?
Yeah.
Okay, another poster picture. Shed guy, Mark Thomas.
Yeah.
And so he must have meant something to you if you put him on your poster, eh?
Well, I didn't put it on the poster. You put it on the poster.
I'm gonna.
No, he doesn't.
Well, actually, I'm not going to. Lee Freeman is, who also does the programs for the Sheffield Steelers, right? So thank you, Lee.
In answer to your question, does it mean anything to me? Absolutely not. Nothing whatsoever. Only on the basis that he supports Manchester City, which is the sort of Poundland version of Manchester United. But he's from the same part of town. Well, similar part of town as I am. He's much more well-heeled than I am. But then again, he's played with great distinction for the club and country for many years. And he's had it tough of late. But we all love Mark Thomas. There's nobody who doesn't. And
no. And that's what's cool about starting this, is you get to meet guys like that you used to battle with, right? And I think it's what we did on the ice, a lot of us, and like that guys realize I played, is makes that unique partnership that I have with them, right? And and in your line of work, I guess there's different ways you make contacts, right? Because you weren't always just into sports. You were the British Regional Press Awards Hard News Journalist of the Year. So what were you covering for that?
Actually, there's an American aspect to that. If it's the one I'm thinking of, there was a woman in Sheffield who received a nail bomb through the post. Actually, it was a courier brought it to her house. She opened the package, it blew her arm off and caused her horrendous injuries. And the courier, the motorbike guy who brought it to her door, who'd been provided with the bomb and paid for it by her estranged husband, flew to America. I went over to America, went to cover, because he got arrested and they're going to deport him back. So I went to the extradition hearing in some horrendous place. What was it called now? Can't remember what it was called. I went to the extradition hearing, and bearing in mind I'd flown 1,500 miles to get there, and you have to persuade your news aides to fund such an operation.
No doubt.
Bridgeport, Connecticut. That's where it was, Bridgeport, Connecticut. I got there and arrived at the court, and on that morning they said, oh no, Colin Raymond Robinson isn't going to be in court this morning. He's not being produced. The case has been put off for a month. So I thought, how am I going to tell my employers that they just spent X thousand quid to get me here?
And now there's no story to get. Yeah.
So on TV, I'd watched films where they'd said, American crime series, and a reporter would go up to the some official in the court and said, I'd like to see the papers, please. Now that would never work in a million years over here, but I tried it anyway. And this guy said to me, well, you could see it, but I can't show him at the moment because they're with the judge. So I said, okay, any chance of me waiting? He said, oh, you can wait, but I don't know how long it will be. I've nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And then this woman came in with these things. She said, oh, I'm the judge. Would you like to see this? So I said, oh, absolutely. Yes, please. So she put it in front of me and then walked away. And I thought, does she realise I'm a journalist? Is this all on the level? Am I allowed to
see this and then write about it?
Yeah. But I think, God, so I'm writing down 10 to the dozen. And after about 10 minutes, she returns. I thought, oh no, I'm only like 5 pages in out of 500 pages. And she said, would you like me to arrange it to be photocopied? Oh, yes, please. So she took it away, did photocopies.
And so these are newspaper articles they're using in the court case. Is that what I'm right?
Say again?
What exactly were you getting photocopied? This was the articles?
This was all the affidavits, all the evidence, all the accusations against this guy. And because he wasn't being tried in this country over here, there was no sub judice, so I could use it all. So that's why I was terrified when she disappeared and absolutely delighted when she brought it back. Went back to the hotel room, got the hell out of Dodge, so to speak, went up to Boston, had a few days in the hotel there, wrote little individual stories which I knew to be true. And that was part of the package of stories, which then led to that particular award. But a long time ago now.
Yeah. So it has changed a lot though, your industry, right? Like I think back, so you are the second, I guess, like journalist that's been on in the shed. I had Jeff Hicks on, who was episode 140, and he used to write the hockey articles about like our junior hockey league when I was back home in Elmira. So anyways, I don't know where I was going with that, but you are the second journalist, but yeah, I have no idea where it's going with that. Sugar and spice. I guess I'm not improving, getting worse.
Well, if this helps you out, I am. I mean, going back to hockey front, I am interested in human beings and their individual stories much more than just the game I go to watch. I mean, let's face it, if Sheffield beat Nottingham 3-2, as they did last Sunday, I have to do a piece on the whistle or whatever for online, or if it's on a Sunday for the paper and online. But most people have seen it, and although they might be interested in my interpretation of it or the historical register of it, they don't necessarily need to be walked through that again. So what's more important for me is getting interviews with people who really are interested. I'm not interested in the slightest, but the coaches, the players are. So that's
And
what
that people like getting to know the players, right? They like getting to know the fans. They like getting to make it personal instead of just cheering for the team. It's like when I watch hockey now, I cheer for the people, not really the teams. Right?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I remember last year there was a goalie who will know, Barry Brust.
Yes. Yeah. Me and Simsy tried to set up a goalie fight, and then your coach never started him.
Yeah. I mean, I bring him up because he's the perfect example of a player who you're not quite sure what to think of when you see him. And I'm trying my best to be diplomatic here, but when he arrived, well, why am I being diplomatic? It was the size of a bread van. You know, I mean, it was just enormous. And I haven't seen many professional athletes outside of a sumo ring. And I'm not being rude, because when he wasn't injured and when he played, he was
really good. Yeah.
And he was also a delight to interview. But you know, you want to get into his psyche to find out, you know, whether he's happy with his weight. You make the same point with the coach. Are you happy with that? Oh, yeah. The coach will say, yeah, well, he's always played big. Well, there's only so far you can go. You know, I'm not a dietitian anyway, and I'm hardly a most self-like creature myself. So who am I to point fingers? But that sort of thing gets people talking, and that's really
a story
what journalism's all about. Yeah.
I actually played against a goalie in Germany who I do not believe I ever scored a goal on him. And I thought he was the best goalie that I played against, was Norm Merkel. And he was also the fattest. So
right.
In warm-ups, his team would go out and he would just stand there. He would just like, whatever. If they did the 2-on-1 and passed it to the other guy, he wouldn't move over to make that save. He would just stand there and wait for the next shot. But then come game time, man, it was wild. He just vacuumed that puck up into his belly.
Brilliant. Yeah. Tom Barrasso, do you remember him?
I know him as the player, but then I hear he was a coach over there, but that was when I'm back home, right? So yeah.
Which part of his career do you remember him? What do you remember him doing?
Would have been, I guess, Pittsburgh, when he was like rookie of the year and like in like the old video games when I'm a kid, right?
Well, he came over here to take over the club at a difficult time, and nobody knew how that would work or what he was like as a human being. And when I first met him, I really found him hard to read. There was like a chilling quality to him.
Mm-hmm.
And every time, post-match, every match, he'd give me his time, and I'm always very thankful for that. It's a privilege to be able to talk to professional sports people so quickly after a game, whoever they are. But I never really felt myself chipping under the surface. And I hadn't given up, because I wanted to find out who the real Tom Barrasso was a multi-millionaire with fingers in different pies and £1,000 Italian suits and all the rest of it. And they lost a game at home once. And I just asked him the most inane question possible.
Inane? I don't even know what that means. You're smarter than me.
It was an unremarkable working,
like a generic question. Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, how do you feel, Tom, about that? And he looked at me and he said, when you've had a daughter who's suffered cancer and come through it, you can cope quite well with a game you haven't won. Yeah. I thought to myself, what a fantastic thing to say. B, what a remarkable thing to say, in the sense that I was only asking about the game anyway. But it did open a little window, and that's really what I like to do most. And that's what you do when you get people talking to you after a few minutes.
Well, and yeah, and I do remember what I was going to ask you before, but what I was going to say is when a coach would put me with new line mates, every team I'd be with different guys. I prided myself in being able to adjust to whether he was a shooter, whether he was a bit of a dickhead, whether he went to the net hard, whether he just skated down the wing and shot it, or like whatever they did, I tried to do whatever to adjust to make us good as a line. And I tried to do the same thing in the shed. And it's like my new competition with myself, whether or not I can adjust to like how old they are, how young they are, what kind of player they are, what their background is. And I don't know, it's like a fun competition to myself. So I understand exactly what you're talking about. But what I was going to ask you is about your poster picks. And I was talking about how the game's changed in the media world, in being a journalist. Is you've been in it for 40 something years. We're talking before the internet and stuff. Like I've talked to players that went to Western Michigan and they didn't even have email addresses. Right. And to think about the kids that go to Western Michigan now, where I went, you know, it's all online shit and it's all different. And like now you got punk podcasters sending out media, you could call it media stuff now, like me. Right. And there's just so much out there now. Right.
Yeah, well, it is totally different.
Totally.
And that's good and it's bad. I mean, like, it's not 40, by the way, it's 31 years I've been doing it. Don't age me any further. In fact, I was only 31 years ago, I was only 3.
Holy moly. Well, the research team can only do so much.
Not quite, yeah. But then it was just a newspaper, and the newspapers had cornered the market for hundreds of years. And then, as you say, the internet came along, and all of a sudden, everybody's a publisher, and Facebook arrives, and all the other social media.
And then everybody thinks everything's true too.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, you get caught out now if you do something that is wrong for whatever reasons, whether you invented some nonsense or you just simply made a mistake. When it was just a newspaper, you might get a couple of hostile letters to the editor.
Right.
Now you get harangued by thousands of angry people in their mums, in the bedroom upstairs while their mum's doing the cooking downstairs. So it's a different landscape. But the way I look at it is, I don't really care where people read my stuff, whether it's on paper or online. It does annoy me a bit that newspapers have never really monetized the web aspect to their business, because that is most certainly the future. And if you're giving it away free, that means you're throwing all sorts of advertisements on it, which not everybody likes. But at some point, somebody's got to fund this. I wouldn't like to start again. I see journalists at Steelers, and I'm certainly not having a go, because they're much better at this and much more consumed by it than I am. And every single thing that happens, it's on Twitter, it's on TikTok, it's on Facebook, it's all over. These tiny little fragments of moments that are being made online. Now, that's okay, but while they're doing that, they're looking at their phone. They're not watching the match. They're not watching what's happening off the puck. And also, you've got a minimum of 60 minutes of play. And I would imagine 35 minutes of that is spent looking at your phone. And I just think to myself,
you're right.
Do you get a complete overall picture by doing that? This is difficult enough as it is to find a good story at the end of what could have been quite a humdrum, boring game. But just throwing snippets in. First of all, anybody can do that. They might not get it right. They won't do it as well as the journalists do it, probably. But I don't know. Also, I'm on my high horse now. Who's paying you to do that? Well, Twitter aren't, because it's a free-for-all. Facebook aren't. TikTok certainly isn't.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
I need somebody to pay me to do what it is. And I'm not directly asking the readers to do that. I'm rather hoping that they want to look at the website, not just my stuff, but other stuff, call it up, clicks, advertising revenue comes in, or God forbid, buy a newspaper. I'm going to shut up now.
No, but you're right. And like one thing I do miss is getting a newspaper. Like when guys in North American Pro know what I'm talking about, every guy would get a USA Today and play the crosswords and do all that stuff. You read the sports section, maybe the business section, depending what you're into. But like, I miss sitting down with a coffee and like a real newspaper. And then you're right about the phones. Everybody's on their phones, man. It's like, it's wild. If I walk the dog in the mornings before I start work and I see the kids waiting to get picked up for high school, there's a group of 8 to 10 of them and not one of them are talking to each other. They're all standing there on their phone. Nobody's even looking at each other.
Yeah. Well, I'm not an advocate for let's all go back 100 years because, if people consume their news and sport through the phone, that's absolutely fine with me. Why would it not be fine with me? That's the way they want to do it. I just would like to have seen it monetized a few years ago, and maybe the horse has bolted. And that's why, going back to what we were saying about the way I go about my business, I try and find stuff that's actually worthwhile somebody buying the paper for or going on a website which has got adverts on. I don't want to just do match reports. I want to do the story of Martin Littell. Say Martin Littell, a Czech guy, he's got a Ukrainian wife. All the Ukrainian family where she lived were under threat with the Russians. So they come over to the Czech Republic. He and her are over in Sheffield playing. Accommodation is made available to them. Money through the fantastic Steeler fans, and they always come good on this, right? They always come good on this. Sent many thousands. We got to do this again, by the way. Steelers fans out there, if anybody's watching you, somebody has to take ownership of this and get some more money for Mrs. Littell's family. And telling people stuff like that is so much more important than who scored a goal in
absolutely.
Penalty shot.
Yeah. No, and that's God, you're always trying to get me choked up, eh? I just met you. Stop it. But starting this is like I've raised some money for some things that were near and dear to me, and one of them was Rich Bateman, who's a Sheffield Steeler fan who had a massive stroke. I had his son James Bateman in the shed, and we had a good chat, and he's one of the nicest young men I've ever met, and he's very impressive. But what that family's dealing with and stuff, I could raise them some money, which maybe I don't make money in my shed doing this, or I haven't really figured out how to monetize it, but I have figured out how to raise some money raffling off jerseys and stuff for, there's a lot of real world shit going on out there, right? There's a lot of people that have a lot of shit going on, and it's tough to hear,
Oh yeah. When back in the darkest past, probably what would it be now, maybe 30 odd years ago, when Romania was in free fall, we at the newspaper, the Star, managed to persuade, how we did this, I have no bloody idea at all looking back, managed to persuade a load of guys to get in buses and get trucks filled with building material and travel over to a place called Ploiești, just near Bucharest, and build, would you believe, a little village, or that's a grand term for a few houses strung together, the sewer kids of Bucharest. Really? Because we'd seen all these horror stories about kids living under the sewer. I saw some of them actually near the railway station. It's a haunting situation to watch. And we floated this in the paper, and all of a sudden, everybody was up for it.
For helping out. That's awesome.
10 trucks, 3 coaches. I flew first class, of course. But we watched it all happen, and I learned a lot about life with that. I learned a lot about life going with Steelers to Siberia to watch the game there, and I was much more interested in looking at the dockyards from our hotel, where nobody had worked for years because there was nobody to pay them. And I just think, you crossed the Atlantic to pursue your dream, playing in Germany and Denmark, is it, and Wales. And, grab those moments while you can, because you are seeing things that the vast majority of people don't.
Yeah.
So that's my view.
Well, it's a big world, but it's not that big of a world, right? And when you're talking about how that got started, that they went and helped those kids, there's nothing even close to it. But I think it's really neat when I talk to people in my shed and we could get chocolate thrown on the ice in across the world. Like in the UK, there's chocolate hitting the ice in numerous different arenas. And Wales had Kit Kat or Twix and Buenos for the boys for my kids I was coaching. And then Sheffield got behind Kit Kat. Get that? Were you there that night?
Well, you're knocking on an open door here, Brent, because Steelers fans in particular, and I'm fairly sure this goes right the way across the board, are open to any such stuff.
They like fun, and fun is fun, right?
They like fun, but they also like the human ingredient as well. So don't stop, keep it going.
Well, we're not allowed to throw chocolate bars at the Sheffield Arena anymore, or whatever it's called, because we got in trouble. But we are allowed in Manchester. We just need to win a match here, fellas, right? And then we're gonna have a chocolate storm. So that's where we're heading now.
Did you say you're not allowed to chuck chocolate anymore?
Not in Sheffield. We got banned after we had too much fun at Kit Kat. Get that? I thought the Steelers, I heard that they were about to get a sponsorship deal with Kit Kat after that. Evan Mosey ran amok, wins player of the game. And then there was a statement put out that fun was banned at the Sheffield Arena with chocolate. So
that sounds like a sort of story an investigative journalist should get on. Do you know any?
I hope so. Because I when you wrote about Carter's trip to the shed, that's like, geez, that's like I have an advertising team, right? Or a marketing team. And I was so appreciative. I wrote to you the next day and I said, please come to my shed, which that was months ago now, because things happen quick and you book guys when it's time, and I think it's time now. So yeah. Anyways, that Kit Kat that was wild. It was fun. And now I'm getting sent pictures of Manchester fans going to the game with chocolate signs. I'm getting Manchester fans sending me pictures of chocolate bars. And man, it makes my heart want to explode, because it's just me getting to know a guy in my shed, and to think of all the fun that can happen is pretty wild.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes I'm a bit confused when you use the word the shed. I mean, you're in it. It's not what your
it's my podcast. Well, it's not, right? It's just kind of happened through it was called Two Ales and Hockey Tales, and I just kept doing it out here because then the kids don't hear and I'm away from the family out in my shed, and it just happens. And then I started calling them shed guys and shed gals, and it's certain type of people I'm looking for to come to my shed. It's not about the career they had playing hockey. It's about the people.
Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Kincardine, Ontario, the west coast of Ontario.
The west coast of Ontario.
So
the west coast of Ontario.
Lake Huron is about 100 meters that way, and then across that lake would be Michigan.
Right. Okay.
We're in the middle of nowhere. 2.5 hours from Toronto.
How far are you from Thunder Bay?
Far. That's way up there.
I once went to stay at a former Steelers coach's house in Thunder Bay. Wonderful place, beautiful.
And who's that?
Alex Dampier. You walk out of his cabin, as he calls it, and walks down to what I consider to be his personal lake. It's an enormous lake. He's got a sauna down there. He's landed on his feet. Must be a bit of a lonely existence in a way, but smashing bloke, and we still speak. And going back 30 years since he was at Sheffield, but we still speak to each other on a weekly basis.
Well,
That's the good thing about it, isn't it?
this is getting to chat with people you don't see for 30 years or 20 years or 10 years, right? Is what this is all about. But I listened to each episode to review my performance. And one thing I can't skip over that when you brought it up, I didn't really ask about it. Why did Sheffield go to Siberia?
Oh, they were doing one of these European competitions. And in fairness, they were never going to go too far. And British teams rarely go very far in them.
Well, the Continental Cup they can win. I think I think that the British teams are good enough to win that Continental Cup any time of any year. I think the Champions League's a stretch, but that they're competing is awesome.
Champions League's out the question for a long time. I mean, I know Davey and you probably talked about this, but imports coming over to play in this game is fantastic for the fans. It's great for the sport as a spectacle, and it also brings up the quality of homegrown players. But British players would tell you that there aren't enough of them given the opportunity.
Yeah.
Bench sizes being as they are, there's a British guy that rarely makes the lineup these days who would just like to be the, a forward that you could put on at some point. But while we're not doing that, we're not really going to evolve. I love seeing the Brendan Conleys and the Evan Moses who were born on your side of the pond representing Great Britain. I have absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. But, we need underneath that tier of people coming in from abroad, we need our own guys. Liam Kirk is the perfect example. But because he's an anomaly, because there aren't two Liam Kirks about, there might be further down the line, but, he got drafted by Arizona. He went down to Tucson in the AHL, got injured, and has just this last week gone down to Atlanta. Now, I still think he might well do something. I've got every ounce of me wants him to succeed, and so does everybody else over here. But there's not many like him. And while we're a minority sport over here, which we always will be, while there are so many imports coming over and taking up the slots, it's not going to, I personally don't think it's going to, wholesale change in where Great Britain is in the pyramid.
Well, I think that has to start at the grassroots. I don't think it has anything to do with how many players are playing professional hockey. I think you need more kids playing hockey and becoming hockey guys. Like when you see the kids I coached last year, there's hockey guys. You got to make hockey guys young. They don't just start in pro and just because they're getting more. I think you can, but by that time it's too late. I think they got to be better before that. I think there needs to be more guys ready to make that jump. And I think the guys that are in the elite league, there are probably, I'd say about 10 in the league below that probably couldn't do her. But there's probably a bit of a drop off after the top players in that second league. I'm just thinking out loud. But speaking of Liam Kirk and how small the world is, when you brought him up, is I'm so connected to the hockey world now. It is crazy because I knew Liam Kirk got sent to the coast from a Shed fan who writes, Jason Coles, he supports the Steelers. He writes to me and says, Liam's just got sent down to Atlanta. He played hockey with my son growing up. He's a great dude. Can you reach out to Nesbitt, make sure he's taken care of? And Nesbitt is a Shed guy that's in Atlanta. So I write to him, screenshot the what he wrote to me. I said, hey, this guy's got all of the UK cheering for him. Just, take care of him while he's there. And he says, I've actually been on the ice with him the last 2 days. The kid can play. That was his response. Then his debut in the coast, he scored 2 goals, ran amok. So way to go, Liam, right?
Yeah, completely. I mean, he's so unlucky. Is he 22, something like that, ACL issue. But, that goes with the territory. Brendan Conley scored a penalty shot winning goal last Saturday, was cheered to the rafters. But, his life hasn't been too good of late. He's also coming back from an ACL, was playing on the fourth line. He said to me that, a year ago, he was the guy in the team, to
Yeah.
use his expression, and now he was playing the role, and I hope to be, maximising on any opportunities he gets in the future. So both of them, with different age groups, have a similar thing going on mentally. I just think Kirky will do it. If he stays injury free, he'll breeze through Atlanta. He'll go back to Tucson, and God willing, he'll play in the NHL.
It would be very neat for everybody in the UK, and hopefully that could help more kids getting into hockey when they see a kid do it, right?
Yeah.
But getting a knee injury, a severe one at that age, I may know what it's like. Really sucks.
I bet.
Yeah, I think I was about 23 or 4 when mine happened, but no fun.
Was that an ACL?
No, I did the PCL. Yeah, a little bit more complicated situation.
Right.
Yeah. So anyways, you've wrote 2 books. One's, I think they're very different books though. Killing Time, and then there's Lord of the Rinks. What's that about?
Yeah. Well, Killing Time is a much more interesting one in a sense, because that was about a former police officer who went to prison for a crime he didn't commit, and that crime was manslaughter stroke murder. He was convicted of manslaughter, went to prison. When he came out, he disappeared from view. Nobody ever thought about him again until an informant, what we would call over here police grass, told the police that it was a wrongful conviction and gave them the name of a guy who actually did it. I tracked him down to Bracknell in Berkshire, knocked on his door and said, I'm Bob Westerdale from the Lancashire Evening Post, or Lancashire, as you said at the start of this interview. And I've come to talk to you about the crime you didn't commit. And I thought, this is going to go 2 ways. He might well have done it, and he's going to crack me in the chops, and I'll have to go back up north again. And he said, come on in, I've been expecting you. So I thought, what do you mean, are you expecting me? And it turns out he was a born-again Christian. He knew one day his truth would happen. He knew that he would be vindicated. And we became close friends. In fact, he became a godfather of one of my 3 daughters. And we wrote the book Killing Time. So that was fantastic. Lord of the Rinks was
hold on. I know you're a journalist and usually have a pen in your hand, but you got to stop playing with your tallywhacker down there. You're clicking it. I hear you.
When you say playing with my tallywhacker, that gives me. I promise you, I'm not doing that.
No, I was just kidding. I bet your pen, but maybe it was your tallywhacker. I just heard some clicking down there. Didn't know what was happening. Just don't get all handsy on me, okay?
I'll try my best. It's hard though. Oh no, that's wrong. No, what I was going to say about
Lord of the Rinks, though, what's that about?
Yeah, that was on Ken Priestley, who was a Stanley Cup winner. Came to Sheffield. Most people of a certain age would say he was the best and most exciting player that's ever laced him up for Sheffield Steelers, Buffalo Sabres. He was an exceptional talent and scored goals for fun. And I don't want to talk too much about that book because it's a fundamental embarrassment to me, because I don't think there's much wrong with the content, but it went off to the publishers and was never proofed. In other words, it was never checked. So there were so many spelling mistakes. The first line of that book has got a grammatical error in it. I read that first line of the book. I rang them straight away and I said, I've just read the first line. Did anybody check this? Oh, no, Fred's off at the moment. So it just got done without. So I washed my hands of it and I've had nothing to do with it ever since. So I don't want to tarnish Ken Priestley's contribution to the cause or my memories of him as a friend, but that book itself, I'd rather not talk about.
Okay, moving on. Well, if you get if you feel bored someday and you want like some crazy story about some guy that just missed his friends so much in his shed that he started talking to them and then they could raise money for charities and get chocolate thrown all over the ice,
Okay. Completely understand. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, what is the handless corpse case?
Bloody hell. This is like, there used to be a program on television called This Is Your Life, where they comb through all of your...
That's what I try to do, is go through people's lives. It's just usually I have a hockey resume to go through.
I worked on a daily newspaper just north of Manchester, going back in the 80s. And I was on Sunday duty. So I was the only journalist working on that, on the morning of a Sunday. And I got a tip off that they'd found a body in this lake or this pond in a place I'd never really heard of. So I shot down there, lucky enough to find a policeman who'd talked to me. And it turned out that the corpse had been trussed up, weighed down, and they'd chopped its hands off. Now, there's only one reason why you would do that, and that's to make sure that fingerprints weren't available. So this isn't your normal murder. Now, and another reporter took on the job after that. I was a bit miffed about that, even to this day, but it turns out that it was an Australian-based crime cartel. I seem to remember, I might have got some details wrong here. And it's all about drugs, essentially. But that was an interesting, because I'd not long been at that newspaper. So to stumble across, metaphorically, a handless corpse on my first Sunday duty was quite interesting.
No, that would be. Research team just looks for things and questions,
Didn't expect that one, mate.
Well, sorry. Yeah, I try not to surprise people, but I find your life very interesting, right? It's like, I think a lot of my life now has been documented through the last 235 episodes, and for me to look up some of the things you've done.
Let me tell you the best story of all then, shall I?
I'd love to hear it.
This has nothing to do with hockey, though, so we might be boring all your listenership.
Don't know. This podcast, it's about hockey, but it's not about hockey. It's about stories.
Okay. Well, when I grew up in Manchester, born and grew up in Manchester, I met this young lady called Sue. And she was 15 or 16, and so was I. And we were together for 2.5 years, absolutely mad love affair. But then it broke up, and she went her way and I went my way. And I got married and had 3 kids, and she got married and had 3 kids. And never the twain should meet. No communication, zero communication for 27 years. Doesn't mean to say that I didn't wonder how she was going on and all the rest of it. But, that train had left the platform and I was moving on. And then Lord of the Rings happened, that book, right?
Yeah.
The book happened, and Sue, whose marriage was going downhill in the same way mine was, noticed Lord of the Rings. She was typing in Lord of the Rings to help one of her kids to do some homework. Mistyped it, put Lord of the Rings in, showed up my name, Westerdale's unusual name. It had a click thing. So she clicked me. Oh, do you remember me? Do I remember you? Of course I do. So to cut long story short, she lived on one side on the west. I lived over here on the east. We met halfway, and there was absolutely no going back. That was about 2003. So it'd been a long, long time apart, 27 years apart. We got married in 2007, and the rest is all children and grandchildren. And we're very happy, and I'm very lucky to have her.
Wow. And man, the shed loves love stories. Yeah, that's awesome. That you never talk to each other, but you're still the same people. And then the sparks are still flying, you could say, right?
I think she realizes how lucky she is that she's married to me, although I think she's now looking at me over the top of the laptop.
They all know how lucky they are to have us, right?
Completely, yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get into hockey? Ice hockey?
I had 2 kids at the time in 91, and I didn't really want to take them to the football because it was a bit of sometimes a toxic atmosphere. That didn't work with my eldest daughter, who still to this day loves to go and get involved in that sort of stuff. But they were all brought up, all 3 eventually were brought up as kids watching hockey. So it was good for me to be able to take my kids to something which ostensibly I was working at, an event I was working at, but I could also, they love the atmosphere, the mascot and the music and, the lighting and all the rest of it. So I got involved with it on that basis. And I said to the editor one day, we're not doing this well enough as a sport, never mind the atmosphere. And we're only a few weeks into it, but you could see big crowds. It looked like a different cat, something else, a new kid on the block, so to speak. So they just said, well, you do it. So I can't do it. I'm doing this. He said, well, do it as well. Well, all right then. So I was going to do it for a few months and ended up doing it 31 years.
And that's what I meant. But 31 years. That's a long time.
Yeah. People have gone to prison for murder and been out halfway through that. Yeah.
But it's got to have been fun to see what the sport's become so far in British hockey, right? Like, it seems like the crowds are getting bigger. Like, it is improving. The league is improving. The talent level, I think, is improving. And then you see Great Britain doing so well, right?
Well, I hope so. I would love to see it flourish. I think we've got a bit of a problem in the fact that there are too many big cities across the United Kingdom that doesn't have an elite hockey footprint. So London, obviously, everybody starts at London. There's no elite league team in London, and therefore the national press that's based down there don't give a toss.
Right.
There's none in Liverpool. Not that anybody wants to go there.
I got a question though. Give a toss. What's a toss? Sorry, well, this is why people like hearing this shit, because it's Canadians and Brits, right? And it's like, I don't know what a toss is. I'm thinking it's a shit because give a shit is what we would say.
It is, but I obviously I don't swear. But yes, indeed, that would be it. Yes.
So a toss is a poo.
No, it's not. It's an expression. It has actually probably no literal meaning.
I bet you at some point there was a reason, maybe it's tossing a fart at someone. Who knows? Us hockey guys are different.
Yeah. But going back to what I was saying, Liverpool, London, Bristol, Norwich, Edinburgh, I'm going to say Dundee. Of course, they've got to. There's too many. York. There's too many cities that don't have top flight hockey.
Teams, yeah.
Leeds is an interesting situation. We're here in Sheffield. And
did they not take the big blue tent from Cardiff Bay? Do they not have the big blue tent now?
Well, that's it. And there's some money in this for you. What you need to do is sell the shed. Come over here, build that blue tent in somewhere that's not got one, get yourself in. Leeds could well be the next big thing. They're on
start a team in the big blue tent in Leeds, and then it's like it all comes first full circle.
Not quite. They have got a team in the second tier, and they get good fans, and they're aligned in a sense to Leeds United, the football team. Who'd want that? But they in a fair wind, they could be the next Sheffield Steelers in 10 years' time. They could build a bigger rink, get more fans. I would just love to see it get
continue
bigger
to grow, right? Instead of stick with what you got to keep pushing the envelope, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I do understand. So where else other than Siberia has hockey taken you with the Steelers? It's mainly the Steelers you've covered, right?
Yeah. Oh dear. You're going to tax my memory now.
Oh, dear.
There was a riot in a nightclub it was either Finland or Denmark or Norway or somewhere cold up north.
Hey, research team found it. Norway.
It was Norway, was it? Okay. Yeah.
I'm letting you know about your life now because I read about it.
One of the characters involved in that nightclub was one Jimmy Hibbert, another Ontarian, who's now a school teacher. And he, like Davy Phillips, is also clinically insane, and yet tremendous company. And that's one of the reasons why I was stuck around. These people are I wouldn't have met them had there not have been a Steelers. So I am
Well,
very lucky.
and that's what makes the game is the people like Davy Phillips, man. That guy's a dandy, and I would have loved to play hockey with him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I
Don't you
actually
think he
like
looks
playing
like-
against him. I like playing against him because I felt like he was honest. I knew what I was gonna get, and we were gonna go out there and muck it up. You know?
Yeah. He also looks like one of the characters in Scooby Doo. I don't know whether you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I can picture that too. Yeah. So who do you think have been the easiest to write articles about, the people you've gravitated the most to write articles about? What players of Steelers history that you're just like, this guy's an easy article every time?
I don't go looking for easy articles. There are some people that will be easier to get to cooperate than others. So if I went to Jonathan Phillips and said to him, Jonathan, you played rubbish tonight, what's your view? He would be honest enough to talk under any occasions. So would Robert Dowd.
And some guys can't admit when they suck.
Well, I tell you what, Matthew Myers, you might well have played with him at Cardiff.
He just brought me back for his testimonial. He was my centerman.
Okay, right. He, when he was caretaker manager of Nottingham a week ago, before Corey Nielsen reappeared, he gave an interview to the in-house web guy and said, the last 3 games we've been playing absolute rubbish hockey. And I thought, thank God there are still people who will tell it how it is.
Yeah.
Because sport is full of cliches.
Yep.
Football's much worse than hockey. You'll get managers who won't give you the time of day for a journalist. Hockey's not quite like that because they probably need us more than football needs journalists. But in answer to your question, I don't go looking for an easy interview, but if I ever need a quick quote, there are some people that you always know
you can get it from. Yeah.
But the other thing is, you might, I've never interviewed Brandon McNally that was at Cardiff. He comes to Sheffield. I've interviewed him twice now.
Well, if next time you do it, let him know I want him in the shed, eh? Tell him
he's much in demand, and as his personal agent, I will want 10%.
Sorry, 10% of what? 10% of what?
Fuck all.
Yeah, it's got to be 10% of something.
But like, for instance, last year, one of the stories that I was really proud I did, and it's not often I can say that, is Justin Hodgman, right? Now, he's a guy you really should do. It's not to say you shouldn't do any of the others we've spoken about. But
I've actually wrote to him, and I think he said maybe later. I'm not sure. I think I did reach out to him because he was a guy that his name popped up a few times and people vouch for them. And when I hear they're shed guys, then I ask them, and it's up to them if they want to do it.
Why I brought him up is that he spoke candidly about mental health issues, and not many people are prepared to do that.
No.
And he saw a little piece I'd done about another player and mental health issues, and he said he'd like to talk to me. And I thought, okay, these things have a habit of being set up and then don't happen. People have second thoughts. And he just laid it all out about his own personal difficulties, which don't need me to go through again now. He's got a new life. He's back in North America. He's seen his kid. So I was so proud of the fact I was able to be a vehicle for him to tell others, that there is a way out of this. And that's where journalism can be a force for good, because frequently it can be a cause for bad. So Justin Hodgman ought to go on your show, mate.
I totally agree. And it's interesting what talking to guys can do for people. I've had guys come on and tell me, wow, you're like a doctor for all of us. Like, now that you're now that we're done and we're home and there's nobody to talk to about any of the shit we used to do. And now they say like coming on and getting to talk about it all is like, yeah, yeah.
Have you done Jonathan Phillips?
Of course, he's got bad toes.
You do? Oh, okay.
Have you
right.
seen his toes?
I'm delighted to say no.
Oh, you should look at him. It's a story.
No, I'll pass on that. Thank you.
Okay. Have you heard of bone spurs in the heels where guys get it in their heels?
Yeah,
He has that on his toes.
lovely.
And he wears short, too small skates, and he keeps making
Yeah.
it worse because he wears too
Yeah.
small skates. Kind of weird, right? You think you just
If
get
he's
bigger
listening
skates.
to this, I'm sure he's enjoying this.
Well, I've been sent photos of his, his toes, but I do see he's about to hit 1,000 games for the Sheffield Steelers.
Yeah, yeah, it's just it's beyond remarkable, isn't it? It's just
It is beyond remarkable. And did you know what he was playing through last season as a report? Like, because I found out in a bathroom after the testimonial what he was playing through, and I saw the lump on his chest, and I was like, "You're an absolute animal, and you're what 39 years old."
Well, there you go. There's another thing where, as a journalist, you discover he has a particular issue. And I'm still not comfortable, even now, it's probably completely cured, discussing it because he's earning his trade out of this game. But we don't use, and I don't know many journalists who would, use that information, even though we had it.
Yeah.
Because there's a code here.
There is a code.
It's not just
hockey.
off the record, but you know.
Well, you'd lose the trust of the coaches and the organizations, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's about being a proper person, isn't it? And
yeah,
why would you do that for a one-hit wonder? You know, it might be the odd story I've done in the million that I've done that I wish I hadn't done completely. But you know, I'm glad to say that on matters of that nature, I never find it too hard. Sometimes you think, oh, a great story that, but then you just, there's an inertia in you. Think, no, move on, find something else.
And that's why I just let other people tell the story in the shed, and that I could be like, well, someone else told it. So
yeah, oh yeah. But we're all here to ask questions. Well, you know, so
no, and it's, I don't know, it's fun getting to chat with you because, you know, as the journalist of the team and like the official one compared to me just messing around in my shed, right? It's like
you got that completely wrong. I'm not the official journalist. There's other journalists involved. I'm not with the team. I report on them. I have a certain affinity on a personal level with them. But don't do yourself down because you're not really doing anything different than I am. I give people the opportunity to talk to me, and it happens to go in a newspaper, or it happens to go online, or it goes on YouTube, or it
but
goes
those
on
guys
media.
care, right? Just to let you know, if you didn't know this, I think hockey players like when the article is about them. I always loved when a guy asked me to do a piece and would ask me questions, and then you get to see it in the newspaper. I think that can give people a boost and make them play better, is when whatever they're doing out there is getting attention from. And then when people like yourself get behind you and put it out there and people get to know you more, it can help hockey players play good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this year's crop, we're only a third or whatever it is into the season, and it's been great to meet some of them. And some of them you think to yourself, oh, he's a great interview. He's like, you know, the next generation Jonathan Phillips or Robert Dowd, where you know he's always going to be a decent quote. Somebody will give you a story that you can work up and then move on to the next thing. And then there are others that you think, well, I'll probably give him a miss. Give you an example, and this is not being critical of him at all, but Adam Raska, little centreman from the Czech Republic, as fast as hell, really watchable player. And I asked to speak to him afterwards. So I grabbed hold of him outside the dressing room. Oh, no, can't speak any English and all that sort of stuff. So, oh, fair enough, mate, but I'll take it, questions. You've been here 3 months now. I'll take the questions very. Oh no, my language, blah blah. And then all the players go, oh, shut up, speak to him, and all this sort of the other. Then eventually he caved in, and I did got my camera there, just doing this interview with him. A complete and utter waste of time. His English is as bad as my Czech, and it was in a noisy locker room, and I just said to him, thanks very much, mate, but I'm on my way now.
Yeah.
And that's not, at one point I'd said to Brendan Connolly, I want to speak to him simply because there's only been, I think, one player in 31 years who's refused to speak to me. And he had a really good reason, Adam Rasker, because he can't speak much English. But I got it into my head. I just had to get to speak to him.
Well, and
Does that sound weird?
No, it doesn't, because it's interesting when there's certain guys I feel like I want to have on and people vouch for them. And I'm like, I really want this guy. And then when they say they're not into podcasts or they don't want to talk about themselves, and I'm like, okay, well, like, I want to have on people that want to come on, right? But
yeah,
it's interesting when you talk about it. But when you say he doesn't speak very good English, to me, in my brain, I'm just thinking, why, if he's not learning English right now, and if he's not like buying in and getting into it, like, why did he come to Sheffield? I'm just curious. And that's why I would want to talk to him, because I was just playing with my kid we were playing the NHL video game on there, and he was on the Czech or Republic or Czechia World Junior team. And I saw the last name Raska, and I'm like, is that the kid in Sheffield was playing World Juniors for the Czechs? Like, that means he's a player. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. He's that good and he's that young, right? Is he young?
I think, in fairness, I'll just draw you back to what you said. I think he is buying into it. I think he likes where he lives. His best mate, or his dad, so to speak, is a teammate, Martin Littell. I think if he's never spoken English before, it's a big change for him in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
So I basically was doing that as a funny anecdote. There's certainly no criticism implied of him as a person.
No, yeah. But like, I was the same in Germany. I went to Germany and I didn't know German. And when they would want to interview me, I would say, oh, no, kein Deutsch, or they just wouldn't interview me because I didn't know German for years. And it's like, it's an important part to get that part out there and be able to do the interviews and to be able for the people to get to know you, right? I don't know. I think so.
Well, the upbringing, the social context from which all these players comes is interesting to me. So
yes,
when Matt Patgrave was coming to Sheffield, I noticed he'd been involved with a spat with somebody at his previous team because they'd used racist words. So when I interviewed him for the first time over the phone, before he came to Sheffield, I said to him, I'll tell you one thing, I'd be utterly amazed if you got that here. It's just not that kind of place, and it's definitely not that kind of sport. So he talked about it. I wrote the story about it, and that was it. And that is hopefully the last time I ever have to write about race in sport, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So he moves on, I move on, happy days, nothing else. But occasionally you've just got to prick the bubble. You've got to go in there and ask those difficult questions. So Tyler Mozienko,
yeah, I know the name.
Yeah.
So you're gonna bring up? Did you ask him about it? Because I want to ask him about it.
Of course
I did.
So
do you know that
the club said to me at the time,
don't ask
I know you're
him.
going to. Well, he said, we're not sure, whether we can make him available. I said, oh, well, of course you're going to make him available. Even if
you're going to have to. People have to know. So I got to explain the backstory on this for the people that don't know. Is I'm in Denmark playing for Sunderjyske with shed guy Corey Quirk, and we're running amok. We're top 4 in the league in scoring, and the other 2 are Mozienko and a Russian fella playing with him. And we go to practice, and our captain says, bombshell coming out after practice, fellas. Have a good practice. There's a bomb coming out after. And then our coach comes in and says the top 2 other scorers in the league bet against their own team and are suspended. I thought I had a layup that I was going to lead a league in scoring. I didn't care if it was me or Quirky. One of us was going to, but then that gosh darn Alex Levitt showed up again.
Well, I interviewed him before his first game, and once he'd replied to all of my messages, all of my questions, as far as I was concerned, unless he started betting again, that was the end of the matter. And it was the end of the matter. And he was a good player for Sheffield, and
He
we
was
crossed
a very
those a
good
couple
player.
of other times. But you know, you can't, just because it's sport and you work as a journalist in the sporting field, doesn't mean you shouldn't ask the difficult questions and then just move on. Don't get bloody obsessed by it. Just move on.
Yeah, no. And what do you remember how he responded? Like what happened? I
It
should
was
ask.
fine. It was up, and they frequently are absolutely fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, you just gotta ask people. Everybody can have these perception of people until you just ask them the question, right?
Yeah. There was a guy called Mike Ware, he used to play for Cardiff. You ever hear his name?
Yeah, I've heard that name. Wasn't he a D man?
17 foot tall, without doubt, the most intimidating and aggressive hockey player I've ever seen in my life. And I confronted him outside the changing rooms to ask him some hard questions about, you know, I know hockey is a physical sport, but what you're doing out there is beyond the pale. And I thought, any minute now, I'm going to be in intensive care. You know, I'm going to be accident and emergency unit. And he was so pleasant and accommodating in the sense that, yeah, sometimes I do think maybe I do go over the top, but you know, that's what's got me success. And hopefully as I mature and get a bit older, I think, bloody hell, I'm so glad I asked this, because I'm not in hospital, and B, he's actually answering and giving me a decent story. And I remember going to his wedding in the end.
Is that right? That's cool.
Yeah.
You're getting invited to players' weddings. That's pretty neat. That
not anymore. I'm too old now. I mean, we're talking about many years ago.
Did you hit the dance floor though? Like, did you put on a performance where you can get invited back to the next one? Like, were you legendary, or were you just sitting there?
I'm only surprised that they don't ask me more frequently.
But what I was gonna say is, I think hockey guys, it's interesting for me now. I'm out the other side. Which I do have to get back to the real world, but is that when we're done hockey and we've been just hockey guys, there's a lot of people that don't, I guess, take a chance on us, give us a job, get us started. Because I know from experience, and I know from the guys I was doing the bag skates with, the workouts with, blocking the shots, playing hockey, we can work harder than pretty well everyone. We just need to be given an opportunity out the other side of the game. And when you mentioned that about that guy, those guys that go out there and are entertainers, that put on a show, that put out this persona, like, they're doing it because they are putting on a show and they think people like it. And they are smarter than anybody ever thinks. And they do want to explain themselves sometimes. They're like, well, yeah, this is why I did that, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. At the end of the day, we all evolve as human beings, don't we? Whether it's as a hockey player or as a journalist or a plumber or whatever.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own life to live. And what fans sometimes don't realise is, you know, players, it sounds very condescending and isn't meant to, players have lives and issues beyond the rink.
Beyond winning and losing the game, right? And like, people think that's all we have going on. And it's like, well, we have wives, children, all sorts of shit.
What really cheeses me off is when an ex-Steeler comes back to the arena and he's booed. I'll give you two examples. Ben O'Connor played with astonishing was an impact player.
He was
the
when I
highest
was in Cardiff, he was running the half wall on the power play as a D man. I was like, what is this sorcery?
Oh, completely. I mean, he's an outstanding hockey player, and he left. And I'm not going to go into anything else other than the fact that everybody thought on social media that cared to comment, they were an expert on his life. Give me a break. You don't know anything. You might have heard some nonsense. Who cares? It's not your deal. Get off.
Exactly.
And then and I don't know whether that's anything to do with the fact that he's booed when he comes back. Now, I want nothing to do with that whatsoever. It annoys me intensely. Anthony DeLuca, who you've had on your program, he comes back. He left under something of a cloud. Of course he did, because of that cannabis aspect. But cannabis is freely available in Canada.
Sure is.
Big deal. He came back, wasn't a performance-enhancing drug. He left. He served his time. He signed for another team because Steelers didn't want him.
They boo him when he comes back.
There's no.
Are you serious? They boo him when he comes back?
Well, I listened. Some cheered him because he was up there with Robert Dowd as one of the most popular players.
Yeah.
I always listen to how each one's cheered as they come onto the ice, and he was really up there. But half the crowd, I would say, half the crowd were receptive towards him coming, and the other half weren't. And I just thought, give me a break.
I couldn't agree more with you. That is absurd that you would boo a guy for coming back. He's out there making a living, doing what he loves, and he's already paid a price for something that's totally legal here that I can go buy at the store as soon as we shut her down here in the shed, and I can have it back here, and I don't, you don't lose your job over it. He lost his job for a year, and now you're gonna boo him? Grow up.
Yeah, completely agree. That's my rant over.
I think my rant's over too, though, because I got to get back to the real world. Do you have anything else before we shut her down?
No, I think we've covered about 30 years of life in a 2-hour spell there. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you for coming. And that's what I love about this is it can be, I had my weekend watching all my shed guys play hockey. I had nothing booked. I have nothing planned. And people must think, geez, you must plan these weeks out. And it's like, I wrote to you when I was going to bed and I said, what do you got for me this week? Like, let's make her happen. And then when we could make it work and it can all happen that quick, it's like, I don't need to stress out about not having anything booked. This is fantastic. I get to catch up with, this has got to be one of the more interesting ones for me. And we didn't even have this booked until last night or this morning.
Well, the thing is, I'm still mildly surprised that a hockey podcaster in North America would be interested in what I was doing as a crime journalist in Lancashire 30, 40 years ago.
I don't know either. I'm surprised that the Sheffield Steelers threw a bunch of Kit Kats out on the ice last year too. So I don't know. It's all fun. Fun is fun, right?
Good. Excellent.
And it's been great. It's been great getting to know you. Seriously.
Thanks for having me. You know where I am if you want me, mate.
Oh, we'll do this again. I ain't stopping now. And
Has
been another episode of Zero L's and Hockey Tales with Westy and Wally.